Welcome back to Policing TV. I'm here again with Chief Constable Alex Murray outside and in the grounds of the West Mercia Police Headquarters. Just beautiful grounds, beautiful. No architect has yet ruined any aspect of the buildings here, which is an enormous relief and joy. Alex, I'm just going to spin the camera around so that we've got something more of the flavour of this. Beautiful grounds, lovely buildings. We don't have too much of an opportunity on this video to cover the grounds, but what we're going to do, let me come this side, we're going to head over here and I'm going to invite you to say something, hopefully 10 minutes worth, about the society, the UK Society for Evidence-Led Policing, SEBP, which you founded and you now lead. So tell us about that.
Well, first, I think it's important to talk about what is evidence-based practice, because police engage in all sorts of things, many hundreds of different activities, and the question is, are they effective or not? Do they work in achieving the outcome you want to achieve, and how do you know they work? Because policing activity is built up with lots of history, lots of experience, but do you understand the impact? Because if we genuinely want to make an impact in society, we need to have integrity about what works and what doesn't work. And if there's no evidence that it's effective, could it actually be bad for society or bad for the communities you're dealing with? And so evidence-based practice takes a scientific view, using scientific method around whether something is effective or not. What works is really important, and why something works is really important, and ultimately it's what's the best, most robust methodology for establishing what the cause of something is, or what works, or why it works. That in essence is evidence-based practice. So really it should be the core of policing, like it is the core of medicine. You know, you would always want to say, when someone is giving you a drug or operating a procedure on you, have you tried this? Have you tested it? Do you know it's effective? And they'll go, yeah, we've done a randomized control trial. It might have these side effects, but generally the benefits outweigh the costs. Why is it effective? Well, we've had this robust qualitative methodology. So that in essence is it. Policing has been full of people making claims about things' effectiveness, and politicians, police officers, charities. If you do this, this happens. And often there's a lack of integrity around that claim. There's a lack of evidence that shows cause and effect. Now, there are many charities, inspectorates, regulators, think tanks, politicians, all trying to influence policing to operate in a particular way. The unique thing about the Society of Evidence-Based Policing, which in the UK is a charity, is it's run by police officers, with police officers and police staff inside policing, trying to professionalise what we do, trying to make us evidence-based. And so we're professionalising from within, which is what makes it so powerful. And you know, policing has sort of grabbed this vision, and there's a big SEBP in Australia and New Zealand, there's an SEBP in America, one's launched in the Netherlands, one's launching in Denmark, one's launching in Sweden. You know, these are like movements within policing that seeks to professionalise itself through evidence-based practice. So that, in essence, that's it. That's the pitch, and it probably works if we just talk through a number of examples, from the wacky to the sort of conventional. And I've probably got 1,000 examples I can give you, but it really...
We probably haven't got time for the 1,000 examples, yeah. But let's go for the wacky, in your words, well, and okay, the...
So there's a number of famous examples of things that people go, this is a brilliant idea, why aren't we doing it? And yet all the evidence shows it's not effective. In fact, it backfires, it makes things worse. Now, the proverbial example is the idea of scared straight, right? You take young people who are on the edges of offending, you take them into a prison, you basically scare them into wanting to go straight. Now, everyone did that quite a lot. It was quite big in America. When the data analysts came in and they looked at it, it not only didn't work, it created a backfiring effect. So you're more likely to make someone criminal by doing that, right?
So that's an example of something that some might think it's bound to work.
Yeah.
Why the evidence says no, it doesn't.
The evidence says no, it doesn't. And you can think of many examples in the medical field. Now, we've tried many things that show that it neither works and it doesn't work. So why would you waste money, the taxpayers' money, doing something that just doesn't make a difference? And I've done experiments myself. So we put people in cells for up to 24, 36 hours at a time. And I thought, well, look, there's a great
all within the bounds of legal.
You go, right, well, what messaging can we put on cell walls to try and create a small fraction of a difference to try and encourage desistance from offending? And we built these brilliant scripts. We graffitied them on cell walls, and then we tracked the before and after level of offending, just expecting to see a small difference and no difference whatsoever. Right. So, but then there's others which have demonstrated profound differences, really complex experiments where you go, wow, that is interesting, and we need to change how we do. And you know, there's hundreds of these, and perhaps a big one that I was involved in was called Operation Turning Point, both in the West Mids and in London. And this takes largely young offenders who, at the point of being charged, were randomly taken away from being charged and given to an offender manager for 6 months to say, look, do these things, and if you do those things, we won't charge you. But if you don't do them, the sword of Damocles comes down and we will charge you. And it had a massive effect compared to the people who were charged and went to court on their reoffending levels and their harm levels. And in actual fact, the effect was exaggerated for black and ethnic minority young people even more, and it's been replicated in London. So to a certain extent, for policing, this is quite an awkward finding, because it shows that to some extent, for some people, sending them to court for some offences has a criminogenic effect, i.e. it makes people worse. And then we did experiments within experiments to see how victims would feel about this, because if you communicate it in a certain way, victims think it's a disgrace, you know, we need punishment. But if you communicate it in a way where you say, look, we want to ensure and minimise the chance of someone else becoming a victim, and the evidence shows that this is the best way to do it, and then victims come along with it. And you know, there's thousands and thousands of little experiments that people have done, whether it's on hotspot patrol, whether it's on knocking on people's doors, whether it's on types of panic alarms for domestic abuse, whether it's whether you should arrest or not for domestic abuse, through to things like how we lead organisations, where you go, wow, listening to that, it's a quality evidence, you know, got cause and effect, I'm going to change what I do.
So the Society for Evidence-led Policing, there's a UK element, there's an Australian-New Zealand element, an American element, you've mentioned the Dutch element as well. And my understanding is that these independent charities or organisations, there's firearms training within the ground, so we ought not to be concerned about occasional
firearms and dogs training.
And dogs okay, so that's the dogs training actually.
With firearms going
with firearms,
because obviously dogs need to operate.
So there's no need for you to dash off and respond to an incident. So that's training going on in the background. So there are at least 4 separate but linked SEBPs. There is a significant...
There's 6 and growing, yeah.
There's 6 and growing. So there is a significant event coming up later this year, I think, I want to say in September, where the Australia and New Zealand element is having an event, and then a week later the UK SEBP is having an event. This follows what was, I thought, a brilliant 24 hours online conference that was co-hosted in Christchurch, New Zealand, and in the Oval in the UK. How on earth those organising it on a voluntary basis survived that ordeal?
It was us, and we nearly killed us here.
Yeah, but it was brilliant. It was truly brilliant. I was fortunate enough to be in Christchurch, New Zealand for that side of things. Do you see there being more collaboration, more joint working between these different nation SEBPs, or do you think it's right where it is at the moment?
No, I mean, it needs to spread. We need more collaboration. You know, in science there's this thing called internal and external validity, so something that works in Australia might or might not work in the UK, so we get together and we go, you tried this, let's try this. And the nice thing is it's led by police, right? And so police leading it, and which is why I want people to support evidence-based policing and the societies of evidence-based policing, because it makes a difference. You know, I find it a little bit strange that community activists are often, when they're talking about policing, are talking about defunding policing or working against policing or how do we fight policing, and you go, no, policing's right at the front line and making difference for humans in a positive way. Work with us in improving the service we deliver, and EBP should be right at the heart of that, because there's little ideology, there's little politics, there is only what is effective and what is not effective. And
So
it cuts through all those other narratives.
So I want to talk about what lies ahead in a second or two, but I just want to spin the camera around. We're just slightly shy of a little distance down here is a statue that's made up of knives and decommissioned firearms. Let's just head towards this, and as we do so there's two elements to this. Knife crime is a key scourge of society, and I'm interested in what has been done on knife crime within SEBP.
So this is when you think about
we'll just
knife
go
crime,
down this. We'll just go down this side. So let me just go to the statue. I just want to go around it. It is quite a remarkable statue here. You can see the firearm used as the nose just there, then knives and firearm here. So it is a beautiful statue, and then so I guess the key is, what's the future for the Society for Evidence-Led Policing? Where do you intend that the UK SEBP go in the coming years? Where do you think that the international collaboration will head over that time scale?
Well, perhaps I can answer that question, but put in an answer to a different question first, because you've just mentioned that
I did mention knife crime first.
I think knife crime is a perfect example of how evidence-based policing helps. So if I was to ask your viewers, how do you reduce knife crime from a policing point of view, there will be a multiplicity of answers. So you need stricter sentences. Some will say ban all knives. Some will say go into the classroom. Some will say you want more hotspot patrol. Some will say you need stronger narratives. Some will say you need boot camps. Some will, there's no shortage of ideas. Knife bins, there's thousands of charities and people who operate in this space. My response would be, right, we're police officers. So from a policing perspective, what does the evidence say is most effective in tackling knife crime? What does the evidence say? And the evidence, I think, is pretty strong on a number of areas. And it says, A, hotspot policing. So understand where it's happening and focus in that area at the times it's happening. Second one, focus deterrence. So very strong evidence building in relation to that. Understand who your habitual knife crime carriers are. Start knocking on their door, offering diversion tactics. And ultimately, problem-orientated policing, a methodology for understanding what's going on in an area, what's causing that particular thing to take place, and then taking a multi-agency approach to tackling each of those issues you've identified. So if you say evidence-based policing, tackling knife crime, what do? It's sort of there. And you ask perhaps another question, why do kids carry knives? Again, you'll have an opinion, lots of people have an opinion. Often you see in the narrative in the media, it's because kids are scared, right? You go, okay, right, so what does the evidence say? And you look at the knives that are carried, these are not pen knives. If you look at the knives involved in homicides, for example, in London, they're not self-defense knives, they are zombie knives and machetes. And you've probably got sort of three reasons why you'd carry a knife. One is utility, I want to rob people. One is fear, I'm scared and I need to protect myself. And one is credibility. And when you look at the knives that are being used to really hurt people, young people in London and elsewhere, these are big knives. So the thing that perhaps people don't want to talk about is credibility. I carry that knife because it gets me some credence on the streets. And, so we need to start addressing those issues. So back to your first question, right?
I'm grateful for you responding on the knife crime point.
Which is, where's evidence-based policing going and the societies of evidence-based policing? I think it's a movement that's seeking to professionalise policing from inside to become more evidence-based. So ultimately, I'd love every country to have a society of evidence-based policing. The whole idea is to work with other providers to get people's hearts and minds thinking, I need to know cause and effect. I need to know why I'm doing this, and is it effective, to ask those questions, to invest in analysts, to invest in the provision of data and really robust methodology. From as simple as, if I've got an idea, I need to test it. And you don't test it by going, here's a crime rate, here's a tactic, what's the subsequent crime rate? Because all sorts of things operate on that crime rate. In fact, you need to start saying, okay, well, let me do it in 3 areas and have 3 identical areas where I'm not going to do it, and I will track the crime rate in all 6 areas, and if there's a difference, I'm a bit closer to cause and effect. Because you see people, including chief officers like me, laying claim to all sorts of things, which is probably not right. You know, when crime goes down, I will say it's because I'm a brilliant police leader, and when crime goes up, I'll say it's because of everyone else, and you can't have it both ways, can you? So
you used the expression earlier on, doomed to success or similar, and I well remember that early on in my policing related career being something that was mentioned quite frequently, that if a project is initiated, particularly at that stage by senior officers, it had to work. Whereas what you're describing here is the willingness to try something different, but being prepared to stop it if the evidence points or clearly states that it's not working. That's the key. It's not being scared, it seems from what you say, of trying something different, but recognizing that it may not work. We'll learn from things if they don't work, and we'll also celebrate the success if it does.
Yeah. And a core tenet of evidence-based practice is actually doing what we say we're going to do to understand whether it works. So, you know, hotspot policing is well rehearsed and everybody says they do it. But when you actually say, okay, show me you're doing it and show me how you're doing it, do you have that officer in the right space at the right time doing the right activity? Invariably, you're not. And so if crime goes down, you might attribute it to hotspot policing, but you haven't done it right in the first place. So how do you know? And we call that sort of implementation failure. And so quite often in evidence-based policing, people will say, or in general policing, I've done this and crime's gone down. Well, the fact is, when you look on the ground, you actually haven't really done it. And because what goes on the ground and what the bosses think goes on can often be profoundly different things.
On that note, with so much more that we could talk about relating to evidence-led policing, Chief Constable Alex Murray, for the time being, will leave it.